I saw, not in a dream, not in a daydream, but as if I were there, as if my soul had been ripped from reality and thrown into a place where time no longer existed. The ground seemed to pulse beneath my feet, as if it were alive, and the suffocating heat made the air almost unbreathable. I tried to move, but something held me back, an invisible weight that crushed me. In the distance, voices whispered, calling my name. But what really stopped me was the figure before me. He was there, looking at me, his eyes reflecting a desperation I had never seen before. And then, in a trembling voice, he murmured, "Do you know what's about to happen?" That's how it all started. I never imagined I would hear something like this, much less that it will be from an elderly person who seemed to know the future. What he told me wasn't on TV or in the newspapers. It wasn't a conspiracy theory, it wasn't the delusion of a fanatic. It was a warning. And now, it all makes sense. What he revealed about the mark of the beast haunts me to this day. Not because of fear, but because of the clarity with which everything was said, as if I were hearing a prophecy unfolding before my eyes. Because if what he said is true, then we are much closer than we realize. Closer than anyone can realize. People live as if they had time, as if they could choose when to open their eyes. But what if it's already too late? What if what everyone hopes to see in the future is already happening right now, right in front of us? My name is Josh, and this story isn't about fear. It's about the truth no one wants to tell. I saw, I heard, and after that night, I was never the same. If you want to know who the Antichrist is mentioned in the Bible, subscribe to the channel now. In this vision, the truth will be revealed before it is too late. I grew up hearing stories about the end times, about signs that preceded the arrival of something terrible. But like most people, I never took it very seriously. They were just words, distant prophecies, tales of old preachers trying to warn us about a future that seemed so unlikely. Until that night, the city was immersed in a strange silence, one of those silences that seemed to carry an invisible weight in the air. The wind was cold, sharp, and the few streetlights flickered intermittently, as if they were about to go out. I walked slowly, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling that was settling inside me. It was then that I saw him, sitting alone on a park bench. An elderly man watched me with disconcerting intensity. He didn't just seem to look at me. It was as if he was seeing beyond me, beyond time, as if heck knew something that I didn't. His eyes were deep-set, tired, but there was a firmness in them that made me stop. The moment our eyes met, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I tried to move on, ignore his presence, but then he spoke. His voice was low, but each word seemed to vibrate in the air, charged with something I couldn't explain. "Do you know what's about to happen?" My heart raced. It wasn't a common question. It wasn't something someone said randomly. There was a tone of certainty, almost as if he was testing me, waiting to see if I was able to understand what he meant. I stopped in front of him, not knowing what to answer. My hands were cold, and a strange feeling was growing inside me. Something about that man told me that this wouldn't be just any conversation. He knew something no one else knew, something that would change everything. The way he spoke made me realize that this wasn't just any conversation. It wasn't the delusion of someone lonely seeking attention. It wasn't a story made up to scare. There was something about the tone of his voice, the firmness of his words, that made everything more real than I was ready to accept. His eyes had something different. It wasn't fear, it wasn't despair. It was as if he had seen it all before, as if he already knew what was coming and was just trying, for the last time, to warn anyone who could still hear. The wind was blowing strong at that moment, and I huddled, feeling a chill that didn't just come from the cold. The elderly man stared at me, and then, without looking away, he whispered something that made my stomach turn. "The mark of the beast is already among us, but no one has realized it." My breath caught in my throat. The way he said it, without hesitation, without blinking, made every cell in my body cringe. I felt a shiver run down my spine, and my mind immediately began searching for logical explanations. That I wanted to laugh. I wanted to say that this was an exaggeration, that he was just repeating conspiracy theories that were circulating around the internet. But my voice didn't come out. Something inside me didn't allow me to treat it as a joke. The elderly man noticed my hesitation and tilted his head slightly, as if he had been expecting exactly this reaction. He knew I wouldn't believe it right away, but he also knew that I couldn't just ignore what I had just heard. The The silence between us was heavy, almost suffocating. The wind continued to blow, dry leaves swirled across the ground, and for a moment I had the impression that the world around us had grown darker. I wanted to ask more. I wanted to understand what he meant by that. But before I could say anything, he continued. His voice was deeper now, carrying a weight that made me feel small in front of him. Do you think you still have time? Do you think you can choose when to open your eyes? My heart was beating so hard it felt like he could hear it. I didn't know what to say, but something told me that that conversation was far from over. And do you believe that the mark of the beast is already among us? Or do you think we still have time? Comment below what you think about this revelation. Silence weighed heavy between us. My heart was still beating fast, and my mind was desperately trying to find a logical explanation for all of this. But before I could react, the elderly man leaned forward slightly, locking his eyes with mine. Something about them seemed to glow in the darkness, as if they carried forbidden knowledge, something that shouldn't be said but still needed to be revealed. His voice was deeper, almost a whisper, but filled with a weight that made me hold my breath. The mark of the beast is not just a number, it is a system. A system that people will accept without question, without realizing it. His words hit me like a punch. I frowned, trying to understand. I've always heard about the mark as something physical, a symbol engraved on the skin, a visible number that would identify those who carried it. But what he was saying was different. It was much worse. Do you think the brand will be imposed by force? He continued, with a bitter smile. No, young man. It will be accepted voluntarily, because they will dress it with security, with progress, with ease. People will want it. They will run to have it. I swallowed hard. My body was tense, and an icy chill ran up my spine. I wanted to ask more, but he didn't give me time. It's already happening. His voice was almost imperceptible now. Little by little, piece by piece, they are putting together the scenario. Those who see are ridiculed. Those who warn are silenced. But when they realize, it will be too late. He lifted his head and looked up at the sky, as if he knew he was being watched at my chest tightened. It all seemed absurd, but at the same time, I couldn't ignore it. There was something in those words that echoed inside me, an uncomfortable truth, a fear that I didn't want to admit. The prophecies are being fulfilled before your eyes, he said, looking back at me. But you are too blind to see. The wind blew harder, and an icy shiver ran down my spine. I felt it. Something changed in that instant. The air became denser, heavier, as if it were being compressed around us. The elderly man stopped speaking, his lips parted as if he was about to say something, but froze in place. His eyes, which until then had been fixed on me, slowly shifted to something behind. My body locked up. We're not alone anymore, he murmured. That sentence fell on me like an unbearable weight. The silence that was already uncomfortable now seemed absolute. Not even the sound of the wind, which until moments ago howled through the square, could cut through that suffocating emptiness. My instinct screamed at me not to turn around, to pretend not to notice. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed the shadow moving. Slow, dense, someone, or something, was approaching. I swallowed hard, my heart hammering against my chest. The shadow seemed to stretch, grow, slide across the floor as if it didn't obey the normal rules of this world. A dark figure, without a defined shape, but which carried with it a presence that crushed every cell in my body. My stomach turned. I couldn't breathe properly. The mere existence of that thing made the air unbreathable. The elderly man pressed his fingers against the bench where he was sitting, as if trying to hold on. His eyes were still fixed on the darkness behind me, but now they carried something they had never shown before. Feared, he leaned forward slightly, his voice coming out almost in a whisper, as if he was afraid of being heard. They already know you heard that, and now they're going to come after you. My entire body froze. The shadow kept moving, getting closer, devouring the little light around it. My mind screamed to run, to get out of there as quickly as possible. But my legs won't obey. I was trapped, completely vulnerable in the face of that presence. And for the first time, I wished I had never stopped to listen to that old man. The elderly man said that the mark of the beast is already among us. But who is behind it? Do you think the Antichrist could be the Pope? Comment your opinion below. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But none of these options seemed possible. My body remained paralyzed. My mind tried to process what was happening, but all I could feel was a suffocating weight on my shoulders. The elderly man continued to stare at the shadow behind me. His lips trembled, as if he were measuring each word before pronouncing them. Then, without looking away, he said something that made my stomach sink. "The mark of the beast will not come. She's already here, and you are already part of it without realizing it." My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to ask what he meant by that. I wanted to demand an explanation, but the words just wouldn't come out. My mind screamed, trying to find a logic to all of this. What do you mean? The brand was already here. I never accepted it. I was never part of it. Or did I? My heart raced. I started thinking about all the changes that had happened in the world in recent years. Rules imposed without question. Technologies that have infiltrated every aspect of our lives. Controls disguised as convenience. What seemed like just a natural evolution now became something much bigger. Something planned. Something inevitable. The elderly man finally took his eyes off the shadow and looked at me. His gaze seemed to penetrate my soul, as if he knew exactly what I was thinking. "Do you still think you have a choice?" he asked. His voice was a mix of sadness and certainty that it was at that moment that I understood. The question was not about whether or not to accept the brand. The point was that it was already being accepted little by little, silently, without anyone noticing. Every small concession, every freedom exchanged for security, every new demand that we have become accustomed to accepting without question. The choice would not be made in a single moment. It was already being done. Every day. My body went cold. How many things had I already accepted without realizing it? How many changes passed before my eyes, and I just followed them as if they were normal? What if there was no going back? The shock of the elderly man's words still reverberated within me. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, my breathing short and uneven. The wind, which had previously been blowing strongly, now seemed to have completely ceased. The world around me felt strange, as if time had slowed down, as if I were trapped in an instant that would never end. But in the midst of it all, an urgency grew inside me. I needed to understand. I needed to ask more. I tried to regain control of my body, take a deep breath, and find the strength to question it. But the moment I looked up to speak, he was no longer there. My chest tightened. My gaze quickly moved from side to side. He had to be there. I hadn't heard footsteps. I hadn't felt him move. Nothing indicated that he had gotten up and left. But somehow he just disappeared. The bench was empty. There were no footprints, no sign that anyone had even been there with me. The absolute silence around made it even more disturbing. I looked around, tried to find any signs, but there was no one. It was as if he had never existed. As if that conversation was just a delirium, a fragment of a nightmare from which I hadn't yet woken up. But it wasn't a dream. I knew it wasn't. His words still echoed in my mind, each one of them weighing like lead on my shoulders. The decision has already been made, but you can still choose which side you will be on. I was shaking. My hands were sweaty, my body felt lighter and, at the same time, burdened with an invisible weight. What did that mean? Had the decision already been made? By whom? For me? Around the world? I took a deep breath and closed my eyes, trying to compose myself, but everything seemed different. I felt different. Something inside me had changed, something I couldn't describe, but that I knew would never let me be the same again. The elderly man had disappeared without a trace. But what he said, that would never leave me mind. I knew that my life, from that moment on, would never be the same. This was not a simple meeting. It wasn't a coincidence, a delusion of my mind, or just any conversation. It was a warning, a call that few have the chance to hear, a warning that cannot be ignored. The elderly man disappeared as if he had never been there, but his words were recorded inside me like an echo that never fades. Since that night, everything I see around me seems different. News that previously seemed insignificant now makes sense within the puzzle he revealed. Small details that previously went unnoticed now scream the truth that no one wants to see. And now I pass this message on to you. What you choose now can define your destiny, because maybe there is still time, but maybe not. We believe that we will always have a second chance, that there will always be a tomorrow to fix our mistakes, to open our eyes and do something different. But what if we don't have it? What if, by the time we realize the truth, it's already too late? I saw, I heard, and now you know too. The elderly man knew something that many ignore, something that few are willing to accept. And now this truth is before you. The question is, what will you do with it? Are you just going to go on with your life, ignoring the signs, thinking that everything is just a story? Or will you see reality before it is imposed on you? If this video opened your eyes, like, share, and comment. Do you believe that the mark of the beast is already among us? I want to know your opinion, because the truth may be closer than we imagine. And if you think this story was disturbing, wait until you see what comes next. Next door, there's another video revealing a frightening prophecy that could change everything you think about the end of times. You need to see this. I'll wait for you.